Welcome, this is Mr. Bowlby. We are reading the fourth grade, Unit 2 reader, The Middle Ages, Knights, Castles, and Chivalry with CKLA. Chapter 1, Welcome to the Middle Ages. The big question of this chapter is, what are some of the events that led to the Middle Ages? If you know anything about knights, castles, or Robin Hood, then you already know something about the Middle Ages in Europe. The Middle Ages may seem to be an unusual name for a historical period, especially one that lasted for more than 1,000 years. People in the Middle Ages did not know they were in the middle of anything. They thought they were modern, just as you and I do today. In fact, the Middle Ages was not a phrase used by people who lived during that time period. It is a term modern historians use today to refer to the time period between ancient and modern times. We begin our journey into medieval Europe, another name for the Middle Ages, by examining some key events that happened long before this age began. The first major event that helped to transform Western Europe occurred when the mighty Roman Empire, having grown too big for one emperor to rule, broke apart into the eastern and western parts of the empire. This division had a major impact on the Western Europe. With the Roman Empire split into two parts, different tribes took the opportunity to seize some of its lands. Interestingly, some of the people were given the name barbarian from the Latin word barbarous, meaning foreigner or not Roman. The Romans may have considered these people to be uncivilized because they did not speak Latin, the language of the Roman Empire. You can see from this map the different groups: the Huns, Visigoths, Vandals, Franks, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes in different colors, different areas of the Roman Empire. All right. Some of the most successful barbarian invaders were the Germanic tribes, such as the Franks, the Visigoths, and the Vandals. These tribes lived on the edges of the empire. As the Romans became unable to defend their borders, these tribes pushed farther to the west. The Vandals looted towns and villages so badly, today we use the word vandalism to describe the destruction of property. The most infamous so-called barbarians were the Huns from Central Asia. Attila the Hun led this nomadic tribe as they invaded parts of Europe in the 400s. As the Huns conquered, they drove the once dominant Germanic tribes even farther into the Western Roman Empire. As warlike tribes swept across the Western Europe and powerful kings emerged, another transforming force appeared: the Christian Church. Throughout these years of change, many people turned to the church because it offered them a sense of stability and hope. The heart or center of the church was in Rome, the seat of the papacy. Slowly, more and more groups of people became Christians, including Germanic tribes. Over time, the church became even richer and more powerful than many kings and queens. It is this time when the Roman Empire was no longer the only powerful force in Europe, that many historians consider to be the start of the Middle Ages. Roman, Germanic, and Christian ideas, as well as powerful kings, began to shape Western Europe. In one of the Germanic regions, a great ruler emerged. His name was Charles. He took control of much of the land that later became France. Charles ruled for more than 45 years. He increased the size of his empire by gaining land in areas that are now part of Germany, Austria, Italy, and Spain. As king, Charles defended the authority of the church. He promoted the spread of Christianity. On Christmas Day in 800 CE, or AD, Common Era after, or AD is the year of our Lord. They're both interchangeable, so you'll excuse me if I say one versus the other. Okay, Charles was crowned on Christmas Day, 800 CE. He was crowned Roman emperor by the Pope in Rome. His reputation was so great, later writers called him Charlemagne, which means Charles the Great. Pope Leo III crowning Charlemagne, the Roman Empire, in the year 800. Charles encouraged new ideas and promoted an interest in education and art. To help him rule his empire, Charlemagne also encouraged a system of government we now call feudalism. He gave land instead of money to those who worked for him in military or government. The practice of paying men with land spread throughout the other countries in Western Europe. Life in the Middle Ages was not the same as it is now. For one thing, people who lived back then probably thought about time differently. Many people measured time by the rising and setting of the sun and the passing of the seasons. For this reason, life likely had a slower, steadier pace. In addition, there was a strong desire to honor God that appeared to transcend time. As a result, people undertook impressive long-term projects such as building magnificent cathedrals that took centuries to complete. This one, the Cologne Cathedral, took 632 years to complete. Language and location helped shape people's lives too. Because travel was so difficult, many people didn't do it. Generally, only rich, educated people in Europe traveled. Almost everyone else stayed close to home. Although Latin was the language of both the church and the government, only select members of society could understand that language. Most people lived in an isolated existence. They did not travel far from home. As a result, most people communicated using language or dialect spoken in the place of their birth. As strange as it may seem to us, in certain parts of Europe, villages from places just 30 miles apart could not easily understand each other. For this reason, most people during the Middle Ages were concerned with affairs of their village, which they owed the local lord in the way of payment, and how to ensure their place in heaven. Here is the chart of how it works from the low freemen and serfs all the way through the middle class, the nobles, to the king, as far as loyalty goes. Although this diagram does not include every aspect of medieval feudal society, it does show the people with the most power at the top and the people with the least power at the bottom. There was another force that had a huge impact on Western society during the Middle Ages. This force came in the form of a deadly disease. The disease, called the Black Death or Plague, certainly made its mark upon medieval Europe. This dreadful plague first appeared in the 500s and the second half of the 1300s. It swept through Europe once again. Spread by infected fleas that lived on rodents, the Black Death probably killed 1/3 of the population of Western Europe. Despite conflicts and hardships, this period in history was also a time when people created impressive and inspiring architecture. Great castles and churches began to adorn the landscape. Kings, queens, and noblemen held jousts and court gestures entertained noble families. In Knights, Castles, and Chivalry, you will discover what it was like to work on the land for a local lord. You will learn about life, what it was like in incredibly crowded towns in the Middle Ages. You will wander through a castle and find out how young men trained to be knights. Are you ready to explore this fascinating time in history? There's some medieval musings. In the Middle Ages, people used pleasant-smelling plants, sometimes used in cooking, to clean their teeth. What is the name of the plant? The first letter is R. An instrument that helps us see faraway objects, such as stars, was invented in the Middle Ages. What is the name of that instrument? Pretty cool. During the Middle Ages, part of the Middle Ages, during the early ages and part of the Middle Ages, during the early part of the Middle Ages, thank you, the Anglo-Saxons and Jute invaded an island nation and remained as settlers. The Angles gave their name to the land or kingdom. What is that kingdom called? That is enough for chapter 1. We'll get to chapter 2 next time. Thank you for sharing with me.